What things are in front of you now in terms of cleaning up the organization of things like this?
Well, the difficult part, Maria, right now is in our efforts to reform this and move this agency forward, we're now seeing a very hostile staff. Now, and there's so much work that needs to be done.
Correct.
The question is, what kind of support can we now expect from this staff?
Yes.
And we have all these infrastructure projects lined up that's necessary, not for MWSS, but for
Yes.
all the people of Metro Manila. What kind of support can we get from them in terms of work to make sure that these projects are done properly and effectively?
And how will you deal with this? Because if they're getting paid less, they're going to be irate. It's going to be hard to make them do the work they need to do. What options are available to you? I'm assuming they can't be fired. They're civil servants, correct?
That's right. You know, Maria, we sympathize with what's happening with them. We realize they've been accustomed to a certain lifestyle. They've probably taken out mortgages, and there are payments to be made, and all of a sudden the money that's necessary for that isn't in place. We actually had started talks with the GCG, which is an oversight body for all GOCCs,
Yes.
to upgrade the salaries, to make it more competitive with the private sector.
Okay.
So that's the solution we're looking for. Unfortunately, some sacrifices have to be made until we get to that point, and GCG unfortunately isn't at that point. But even today, much as we would have wanted to extend its benefits, we would have been part of the problem. Knowing that these issues are illegal, and
Yes.
for us to continue it would make us part of the problem, and we just had to bite the bullet and say, sorry, this has to go, but we're looking for solutions. We're looking for mitigating measures to address this. Maybe not in the short term, but certainly next year.
In many ways, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
this seems to be a perfect case study of institutionalized corruption. Is that a fair statement to make?
If you look at the way the bonuses were given out, certainly it was institutionalized corruption. You know, GOCCs are obligated to turn over dividends based on their net income to the national government. Now, you had boards in the past that would face this and ask themselves, why should I give my income to the national government? Why don't I just keep it for ourselves? Why don't I just keep it for myself and give it and make everybody happy? And that's what's happened. And when we did that, when we did away with the bonuses in 2010,
Yes.
suddenly we had the funds to pay for over 1,000 retirees that hadn't been paid in 2 decades. Suddenly we had a net profit of over 400 million pesos. Suddenly I had 150 million that I could give in dividends to the national government. And yes, there was corruption in that institution, in that form of bonuses.
You're also being attacked by the employees saying that you're hiring consultants.
Right.
How do you respond to things like that?
Well, we had to hire consultants. I mean, we had to get fresh eyes that could take a step back
Yes.
and see and look at, for example, our financial models and the financial systems.
Yes.
We certainly couldn't ask the people who were working in the accounting department to do that. I mean, there had to be some level of objectivity. So that was necessary. You know, but we don't hire consultants just like that. I mean, somebody
Yeah.
said we had 436 consultants.
Yes.
Ridiculous. I
Yes.
mean, we don't even
Yes.
have the space for that.
Yes.
What happened was, like, we only hire consultants first if we need that fresh pair of eyes, we need a fresh perspective, or second, if there is capacity within, they might be overworked. I mean, they're busy with their operations, and we needed extra work for that. For example, we had to look at Ipo watershed. We had to look at our watersheds. There's no one in the plantilla who knew about that, so we
Yes.
had to get that. We had to get website developers, and all in the spirit of transparency and putting things on the web. We got hacked last week, by the way. Now I need to get the consultants back to fix it, but I'm going to get criticized if I do that, so that's
Right.
going to remain hacked for a while.
You're in a tough position.
It's a tough position.
I mean, in many instances, the very people who you need to do the work you want to accomplish for MWSS now are
Hostile.
turning against you.
Very hostile.
Right? Because they're losing what institutionalized corruption has given them in the past. What are the challenges for Daang Matuwid? You are a real life existing case study of it. What do you have to do? What are you facing?
You know,
in putting this together?
when you think about it, the Amatuwid shouldn't be difficult. It's really just righting the wrong and looking at excesses and looking what's legal and what's not legal.
Correct.
But easier said than done, right?
Right. And if the wrong thing has become the norm,
Exactly.
then anything you do will be bad.
Especially if it becomes a feeling, if they feel they're entitled to it, then that becomes a problem.
How will you deal
And they
with
don't
this?
see it as wrong.
Correct. Because it's the norm. Everyone is doing it.
That's right.
And if it's not even on the books and they have their own little fiefdoms, what's wrong with that? How do you
What's
respond
wrong
to
with that?
Right. How do you change this?
With
Bondi?
great difficulty, right? But again, it's going to be difficult, but we have to do it. A lot of communication is necessary with the staff. And I suspect, for example, a lot of the allegations of the employee that are the associations throwing at us, perhaps the other employees don't even know it's untrue. So a lot of communication is necessary. But Maria, there are two groups in MWSS. There's the regulatory office and the corporate office.
Yes.
There's a lot of dialogue with the regulatory office, and they're not part of this group that's attacking the board.
Okay.
So we see that the dialogue does help, but for other people, and the corporate office are the old timers. That's where the
Yes.
resistance is.
I see.
So it's
Can
going to
you
be difficult.
fire them?
No, we can't fire them. I mean, there
sound like
is
a
a process.
capitalist when I
There is
say
a
that, right?
process.
Yeah.
There is a
Yeah.
process. If you're in the private sector and your employee doesn't do well, yes, you can fire. In the government, they get the head out, and that's what they're trying to do now.
What's at stake for you? I mean, you personally, Dondi, some people will say you must. This is actually some of the things I've seen already.
Okay.
That man is corrupt.
Right.
He was with MWSS before. You said you had a stint before.
Right,
Did you
right.
work in the financial oversight?
No, I was a financial regulator.
Financial
so I was
regulator.
oversight of
So
Manila
you were
Water.
oversight.
Right.
So you'll get these attacks.
Sure,
And you
sure.
have gotten them. How do you respond to them?
Well, no, I haven't gotten the corruption side on my side. It's really
on
not
social
yet.
media.
It is, but well, it's tough. I work with a very strong board. I think the check and balance is there. We try to be as transparent as possible.
You certainly have. You're
transparency
bringing
is
it up.
really critical. I think
Okay.
if you want to avoid corruption, communication. I mean, the website would have been great. I would have wanted to put up board resolutions and
Fantastic.
stuff if we had a website. So
Yes.
we are working on this. I need new blood, though. I need new blood in MWSS and people with a passion for change.
So let me focus you on the big things you want
Okay.
to accomplish. What are the big things you see MWSS doing after?
Oh,
You have to
God.
clean up your institution. You have to make an institution, it sounds like, right? What does it need to do for Filipinos now?
What does MWSS need?
What do you want it to do? I guess you said
Okay.
that there were things. You talked about Angat Dam.
True.
And I guess let's go back to that. If
All
you
right.
were to distill it to the top 2 priorities you want done before the end of the year.
I need a new water source.
Okay.
I need a new water source. 97% of our water comes from this one dam. We put all our eggs in this one basket. From a strategic position, from a business point, it's stupid. I mean,
Okay.
if something happens to the dam, and incidentally, I mean, there was a study that showed that there's a fault line 200 meters from the dike. If something happened to the dam, that would affect our 15 million consumers. So we need to look for an alternative water source.
How do you do that? I mean, obviously the bodies of water have been there. How do you find an alternative
we
water
have.
source?
We just completed our studies with the World Bank. We've worked with UP. There are many sources that we
So
can
it's a
tap.
matter of infrastructure to get
It's a
the water
matter
in.
of money. It's a matter of economics. What
see.
makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Do we want to do a take or pay?
Okay.
Because from a supply perspective, we don't need the water just yet. We're fine with the water. But from a security perspective, we certainly need redundancy.
Okay.
And do I want to do a take or pay
Yes.
for a site, for a source that I won't be tapping water from? So these are things we're working with the PPP Center. And how do we finance it? All these
Right.
things. And so these are the things. So that, if you ask for 2,
Yeah.
that one alone is it's going to fill
There.
it's going to keep me busy for
How
a while.
long do you think the organizational revamp will take?
We're working closely with GCG and DBM for this. I think we're one of the priority agencies of GCG. We're hoping to get some results early next year.
you've always been idealistic. I mean,
Yes.
just so you know, the first time I met him, he was one of the Subic boys, the idealistic young boys who volunteered for Gordon
Right.
in
20
SBMA.
years ago.
In SBMA. So
Yeah,
you
came
were
home from the
idealistic
States.
then. You came back from the
Right.
States and worked at Harvard or
Fordham,
Fordham.
from
I'm
New York,
sorry.
right?
So
yeah.
so you came back, and then now you're walking into an agency that has that you have to clean up.
Right. It's a new challenge.
It's a new
It's a new challenge. But it's not that different though from SBMA. We were in SBMA. We were asking ourselves, you know, with all the corruption happening in the Philippines, can we create this little enclave where things would go right? This little enclave where there would be no corruption, and in many ways, we were comparing ourselves to Singapore.
Correct.
Right? And maybe in a way, that's what we're trying to do with this government agency. Can I create a government agency where we can proudly say there's no corruption? But SBMA was probably easier. We started fresh. This
Yes.
one, we're saddled with old practices.
Yes. So the question for you, you're in the middle of it, a year and a half in.
Yep.
Can you create an enclave in MWSS?
Well, we're doing that now. We're working very hard to see that it happens, and we're getting some support, at least from other governments, from the media, and from the consumers at large. There is resistance, but that's expected. And that's where the challenge is.
Last words, Dondi. We're at the end of our time.
Well-
Anything that what do you see moving ahead now?
Well, you know, I just want to say it's sad that we're getting this resistance. I mean, we've always said that these people our employees are in public service. They're here, and sometimes they forget that side of the job, that they're here to serve the public. They're not here to put more money in their pockets. They're not here for their outrageous car plans or their housing plans, but they're here to serve the public. And sometimes, because they've probably been in government for so long, they've lost that message. And I'm sure they started out right.
Well, it's very similar to what happened in the armed forces of
Right.
the Philippines, right? Where there were allowances that shouldn't have gone. So anyway, institutionalized corruption. Thank you so much for speaking with us
Thanks,
today.
Maria.
We've been speaking with MWSS Chairman Dondi Alikpala. I'm Maria Ressa. Please send your questions. We'll make sure Dondi gets them and we get some answers back to you. Thank you.